Hey kids, what's going on? It's X-Ray Vision in Quattro Cinco Studios coming to you live. And I have a very special guest today, Mark Wild, who I met through Twitter. I was bouncing around Twitter and I was sending out invites and trying to find guests and see what's going on. And Mark, I saw on Mark's page and I saw not only a picture of him hanging out with Richard Hart, but also the mention of a book that he wrote that is now available on Amazon. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Mark was, I believe, born in Poland. Is this correct?
Yes.
But you didn't stay in. You're not in Poland currently. So there's a story there, right?
No, I'm not. Yes, I actually left Poland shortly after finishing my college. So that was, I don't know, 17 years ago, 16 years ago, something like that. My first destination was still in Europe. It was Dublin in Ireland, where I spent additional 3 years, maybe 4, if I remember correctly. After sometimes 300 days of rain and cold every single year, waiting for the summer, which never comes, I had enough. Right? It was just, it's a nice, friendly country, full of opportunities, but the weather especially got into me. And somehow, roughly in the middle of my stay in Ireland, I went for holidays to Thailand for about 2 weeks. Then I came back and nothing wanted to be the same anymore. And roughly a year later, I started to plan, let's just go one way and see what happens, pretty much, right? So that was about 12 years ago. Since then, I lived in Thailand, in Burma, in Cambodia, and spent roughly about 2 years in different places in Latin America. Eventually came back to Thailand, to Bangkok, which is my base, and that's where the 14 hours time difference between us come from these days. Prior to doing anything with crypto and discovering hacks, I worked in the tourism industry. So I worked for hotels, I worked for river cruises, I worked for some travel agencies, mostly all over Southeast Asia, a little bit in Latin America. And then, crypto was sort of a side hobby since 2017. I kind of came across it. I tried to learn a little bit, put a little money into it, seeing how it's working actually, mostly experimenting with different things. I wouldn't call it trading. It was more of like, okay, let's buy this, let's hold it for a while, let's sell it, let's see what happens. So, you buy a little bit cheaper, the price goes a little bit higher, you sell it, and you try to understand, was it just a random push of a button, or do you actually know anything? From today's perspective, I know it was a random push of a button. It was just like, well, you look at this thing, it grew 15%. So yeah, I'm 15% in profit, let's sell it. But there was no skills or knowledge there whatsoever. So I kept working on my full-time jobs until 2020. And this is when a good friend of mine introduced me to hacks. So I bought my first hacks roughly in March 2020, dived into the system, tried to understand as much as I can about everything hacks related, probably watched every single Richard video on YouTube related to hacks, and not only. And roughly since then, I could say, once hacks started to grow in value, I had a lot of stakes. I had a staking ladder as well, which was coming out. It's still coming out every month for a few years still. I have a few annual ones, which will be with me for another 12 years or 13, given that I set them up in the very beginning. And it gave me, you could call it like sort of financial freedom, that I never really came back to a full-time job for someone else. Which doesn't mean I don't do anything. It's just I don't have a boss anymore, which suits me very well. And at some stage, I think it was roughly beginning of this year, I kind of came up with an idea. You know what? Let's try to give back to the community a little bit. Let's try to create something which hopefully will help to onboard more people into hacks, and in the same time, I'm not a YouTuber. I didn't see a need for additional YouTube channel. We have a lot of them, and of course, the more the better. But it's not my set of skills really. It's not my personality. So I decided, let's write a book. I'm better with a written word than a camera. So I started to put it all together in the beginning of the year. And the book was published roughly a year after, on the third anniversary of Hex on December 2nd. So that's 2 weeks ago, roughly. And yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of introduction.